Welcome to all of you. This is an interesting conference with Victoria Gutiérrez. Our speaker is Colombo-Inglesa. She is professional in international business and magister in strategic marketing management from Kingston University in London. Her work experience has been in big enterprises, as a head of marketing, driving marketing strategies and business growth. Right now, she is the head of marketing in Ariston Group in the United Kingdom. In this conference, she will bring a comparative perspective on how artificial intelligence is being adopted in developed and developing markets. This is an interesting moment for us. En nombre de nuestra rectora, la doctora Viviana Vélez Medina, y del decano de la facultad, el doctor Fabián Andrés Estrada Herrera, les damos la bienvenida a este momento y a esta importante conferencia que la hacemos en el marco de procesos de internacionalización en casa, pero también procesos de educación continua. Ustedes son privilegiados de poder disfrutar de esta conferencia. Una conferencista de este nivel no la tenemos todos los días, así que espero que por favor tomen atenta nota de lo que vamos a aprender el día de hoy. Victoria, bienvenida y muchas gracias por estar con nosotros.
Gracias, Ana María. So, hi everyone. I will talk slowly, but if anything, if you feel that I'm talking too fast, just put your hand up and I will slow down. So, first of all, thank you all for being here today. And as Ana Maria said, I'm going to be talking about AI, artificial intelligence in the world of strategy, speed, and success. So, I will start a bit about me. I'm Victoria, as Ana Maria has already pointed. I have over 20 years experience in different marketing areas: agriculture, construction, renewables, and education. So I studied in the UK, I lived in France, and I also studied in France. So that's a bit about me. My family is all Colombian, so that's the link between the UK and Colombia for me. So I hope you will find this quite useful and insightful. So to start, I've prepared a few slides around artificial intelligence and really focusing around why artificial intelligence matters today and why it's so critical in all of the business context. I will also be giving some insight in discussions around the boardroom, what we discuss, what we debate as management leaders, and focusing around 3 big shifts. Also, then I will be giving some insights in terms of artificial intelligence, of how different sectors are evolving in the UK, in Europe, to share with you all. And then we'll do kind of a quick reflection and I will kind of pass it over to all of you. And then we can just have a session of questions, etc. So, to start off, for me, when I talk about artificial intelligence, I always focus on the future leaders. What does it mean, artificial intelligence today? And how essential is it? Because it's no longer an option. It's really essential. And it's something that is touching in everything we do. So as yourselves, as future leaders, being mindful and being fluent in artificial intelligence is very critical. So when we think back of how the world has been evolving, we go back to the Industrial Revolution and all of the changes of how that has been. And I would quite argue that today we're going through a digital industrial revolution. Lots of transition where many people even kind of think, okay, is artificial intelligence replacing human interaction and human thought? But reality, no. It's just more of speeding it up and changing the dynamics of how we work. So this is kind of really a bit of an evolution that I wanted to share with you all. Before we go into the let's say, the 3 big shifts. And I've called it the 3 big shifts because over the last few years, in all of the different projects I've been involved in, and in all of the different, let's say, challenges that I have been debating in, there's always a consistent talk of 3 points. And those are strategy, speed, and success. And when I talk about these 3, which I'll go into in a moment, they impact in every business decision that we make. So if I start off with strategy today, what artificial intelligence is bringing to us is basically rewiring the brain. And it's rewiring every way how we do business. And what do I mean by that? We're very used to talking about long-term planning, putting together a, let's say, business plan or marketing plan, 5 years. Nowadays, and when I look into the UK, Europe, the way we do business, yes, we do have a plan, but really we work is on 1-year plans, 6-month plan, because everything is evolving and everything is changing and it's very, very fast. So I thought I would give an example of the shifts that we're seeing. So we all know Nike. We're all very familiar with this brand. We know that for many years it's had physical stores, everyone, it's accessible to everyone. But what Nike has been in the last few years challenged is how can I engage with customers? Because now we're no longer talking to baby boomers, we're no longer talking to millennials, we're talking to Gen Z, Gen Z. So it's very, very different. And the relationship is changing. And like yourselves, you're all consumers, we all want a relationship directly with us, not what, let's say, my friend wants or my relative has. I want an engagement and a relationship with a brand to my needs, and I want it tailored to me. So what Nike, for example, has done, they had to look at all of their strategy, and they had to rewire, let's say, the brain, as I call it. And how have they done that? They've basically started developing lots of, let's say, data and algorithms through artificial intelligence, and they've come up with an application that we can see here, which is called Run, and it's basically to develop that relationship with the consumer. So people want, what Nike wants is basically for you to engage with the brand through the running, which then it sells you other type of gear, sports gear, new trainers, new, let's say, events, and all sorts of activities like that. How and why? The objective, it's not so much making money. It's about creating loyalty and leadership and bringing them together. So this is kind of just an example from a, let's say, strategic point. When we look at speed more as a superpower, I call it, because what artificial intelligence is giving us is access to a lot of data. And data today is absolutely critical to be able to make good decisions, not just any decision. And what it does, artificial intelligence has allowed us to accelerate that decision making and giving us the analysis of the data and the insight of the results in order for us to make the decisions, because we no longer have a lot of time, because decisions have to be made quicker. So here, I'm sure you are all familiar with Uber, but I kind of give you an example of how Uber works in the UK. And Uber in the UK started off, as many of us know, as taxis. But today, Uber in the last 3 years has now access to helicopter. We can order coaches if you want to go on a train, boats. You can do your online delivery like Rappi, for example, here in Colombia. You also do like Servientrega, so you also do parcel delivery as well. And all of them follow the same concept, which is all around convenience, speed, because the idea is that you can access the service that you want within 3 to 4 clicks, and then you get what you've asked for, which is the delivery of the service. And Uber as such is an example of a disruptive business because it's different, it's new. So all, let's say, traditional taxi drivers, for example, it's always been a challenge. And in many countries, it's always been a big debate whether do we allow Uber or do we not. But all Uber has done, and in many cases, if I take the example of taxis, the fees are the same. The only difference is that they provide transparency. And it goes back to what I was saying at the start. It's all about being able to show the data. And if you're able to show the transparency, as consumers ourselves, we like that. Even if you end up paying a bit more. And it's very particular. But it's something that happens a lot, and Uber is a really good business model that shows that. So, everything clear so far? Very quiet in the room. Are you all understanding me? Yeah? Okay, good. If not, please put your hand up. We go onto the third point. And it's about success. So how does artificial intelligence help businesses reach success? And how do we define success? Because traditionally, and I remember in my days at university, success was how much money am I making? That is how we measured success. Is it profitable? Is it not? But today, of course, in the business world, of course, we're all here to make money. That's a standard. But we also want not just to make money short term. You want a long-term business. You want to create and engage with your customers so that you can develop a long-term business. And that's what, with the help of artificial intelligence, that is what we're seeing more of. So, I give you an example. I know that IKEA exists in Bogota, and I think Medellin. But IKEA is a very, for those who are not maybe familiar, it's a business that sells furniture, but it sells it in a modular form. So it's not built. So you basically have to go in, you choose what you like, you take it home and you build it yourself. So you do half of the work. And because you do half of the work, IKEA is usually very competitive compared to traditional furniture brands. But in the last few years, and IKEA is a global brand and very well established as a Swedish company in UK and Europe. What IKEA has done is, because there's a lot of competition now, is that they have found an edge and a side of how can they stand out in the business world and how can they be a strong brand. And they focused on the environment, so green credentials. So for example, all of their fleet, all of their lorries, their transport is electric. and it follows the whole, let's say, custom of Sweden as such, because in Sweden you have like now solar, let's say, motorways, big avenues that are solar based, and therefore the cars can all charge as they're driving. So IKEA has started to run that model across all their markets globally. And what they do with their value chain, which is all of their logistics, it's all digitalized, and they make sure that it's very, very transparent in order so that as a consumer, I know exactly how much carbon emissions have I used with every item that I'm purchasing. And that approach has allowed IKEA to gain a bigger market share in the world of modular furniture, and to give them a strong foothold in the area. And so that's what I wanted to share. It's no longer just about making money. It's about developing a relationship with your customers. Because if we think of ourselves, if you have a good experience with a brand, you go back and you want to purchase again and again. And those relationships are far more profitable than maybe just buying once at a high price, good money, but then never going back. And I think that's kind of the key message with this part. So before I move on, everything clear? Any questions that you would like to ask? No? Okay. So this is more where I wanted to share with you all what us as leaders, what we debate and what we discuss now with this buzzword, this word of artificial intelligence. Okay, so what? Artificial intelligence, you can argue, for the last 20 years has been present because we've all seen it in softwares, computers. There's also, that's artificial intelligence. But since perhaps 2022, post-COVID, what we've started to see is with the introduction of ChatGPT, with Meta going live, it's all of a sudden, wow, artificial intelligence. It's changing the world, it's changing everything. What do we do? And in markets like United Kingdom, everything now is artificial intelligence. So when you are in a boardroom and you are discussing with the CEO, we have these debates of, okay, so what do we do? What is the debate? And really, the debate always falls in like 3 stages. First, we start thinking, well, my business works. I'm profitable, I'm making money, so why should I change? There's no need. Why? Okay, so what? Artificial intelligence? I don't care. But maybe we could change some processes. We could become faster because society now is less patient. Everyone wants everything straight away. No one wants to wait. No one wants to hang around and wait until a decision is made. You want answers straight away. We don't have time. We don't have patience for it. So we think, okay, what processes maybe can be altered, can be improved? But what we usually forget is understanding the risks of staying put. If you don't do anything, if you don't change or evolve, the likelihood is that you're going to fail. And when you follow that thought process, what I find when I'm with my colleagues and in different markets, we find that there are 3 key, let's say, pivots that we follow. And it's data management. Because some processes maybe don't need to change, but you need to understand what is the data behind everything. And data nowadays, more than any time previously, data is so valuable. So being able to analyze the data, understand the algorithms, allows us to understand how customers are thinking, how customers are behaving. What do customers like? It may be very different, the behavior of, let's say, in El Quindío, or maybe in Chile. Like, it doesn't matter. But although there are similarities, data is so, so valuable because everything changes. And all of us have individual needs. So the debate there then becomes, how do I trust the data? Because yes, I can have access, and all of us, if you think about it, with our mobile phones, when you all arrive today, you will scan your QR code. That's data. So we now know who attended, who didn't attend. Simple, easy. But then it's understanding, how do we trust this data? Data leakage, fraud, all of that side, and how can we interpret that data to make it valuable and useful and profitable? And I think that's the big debate, which leads us on to trust and transparency. Because when you have access to the data, when you have all of this, let's say, insights and algorithms that allow you to make decisions and allow you to think things differently, it's how trustworthy is it and how transparent is it? And by that, I mean, who owns that data? And this happens a lot in businesses. And myself, in many management meetings, there's always been debates about making sure who owns the data, because the data cannot be just in the cloud. It has to be owned and managed by whether the company, it has to have the right credentials, the right privacy policies. It needs to have the right, let's say, backup, because otherwise it can become very dangerous. And I think it will be, and this is just my personal view, in the future, it will be one of the biggest, let's say, threats that we have worldwide. Because more than, let's say, the Third World War and so on, it's the cyber attacks. And in the UK, for example, we've seen them, that it can bring down all the planes, closes the airports. And what happened? It was a cyber attack. They tried to access, they tried to hack, and therefore 4 hours, no planes leaving London, which has cost hundreds of billions of pounds. And those are the risks that come around that data and the management of that data. And then as a business, if I go back to the business context, it's about being ready. And all of us, although we're hearing artificial intelligence and the evolution, not all businesses are ready. And even ourselves, there's a lot that we're constantly learning. So it's being able to understand the readiness, in what stage are we in the business, and therefore to what level can we implement new technology, like machine learning, artificial intelligence, and also what value will it have? Because also we hear a lot of buzzwords, and since I arrived to Colombia, I've been to Tigo a couple of times, and I see that there is an advert of a mobile phone, and they talk about artificial intelligence, the pictures, and I think, okay, but what does it bring? They're just saying artificial intelligence because that's the word that everyone wants to hear, but it doesn't mean anything. And I think that's what's important. It's how do you implement this technology to actually add value, rather than just putting it out there to say, yes, I have artificial intelligence, but it doesn't really add anything as such. So on that note, these are just some of the tools that I use, and I usually encourage always my team to use them. So I thought I'd share them with all of you. And these are some of the tools that are very popular. And whether you're working in, let's say, sales and marketing, HubSpot allows you to enter the data and be able to analyze it very, very quickly. And I think that's the element of value where this new technology comes into play, because it allows us to understand and speed up things. Whereas before you could be analyzing a few hours on Excel sheets and analyzing that data. Now you can enter it, you're specific in terms of what the output you want, and then you can start evolving. And therefore the human, let's say, where we come into play, it's more about our strategic thinking. We drive it because at the end of the day, it's artificial intelligence. It will only do as much as what the human inputs into it. So we are still very much the key drivers of it and the key decision makers of what we want to shape. This DeepL is a tool that I think maybe you might all find quite useful, and it's a translation tool. It's free. It's very, very useful. I work with various markets, so Polish, French, Spanish, English, and sometimes, as you can imagine, when you come up with a campaign, it's very difficult to just say, okay, in English this works, but if I translate it literally, it will be a disaster. So you need a good tool that doesn't just translate, but it translates in a colloquial way. It translates how people in that culture and in that language actually think and talk. So it's very useful. Canva, I think many of you may be familiar with. It's a really easy tool for any design work, creative, and myself as a marketeer and working with marketing agencies, we do find it very useful to work in-house. But as I say, this is just the tip of the iceberg. It's there are so many applications that are free, that are available today. And I think all of you as future professionals, future leaders, take advantage of all of this. I remember when I was at university, we didn't have any of this. Everything had to just be, read your books and go for it. Now, take advantage to take your degrees to another level, which I think is very interesting. I wanted to add these next few slides because I wanted to try and make it as relevant as possible for yourselves as future professionals. And also as a manager and a leader myself, my team is very young. So I see you here all today and I think of my team. They're all young, they're energetic, they're vibrant, they want to go and conquer the world, and it's brilliant. So there's a few things from, let's say, the UK trends that I want to share with you all. So one of the challenges that I suppose we have is that if I go back 10, 15 years ago, you were very much, let's say, talking to a very squared audience. And it was very traditional, it was very constant. Therefore, you could do 5-year plans. It was easy. It was so much easier. When you had to, as a marketeer myself, if I had to develop a strategy or a campaign, although it was across different countries, it was very easy because you were almost targeting a specific audience. Nowadays, we're targeting lots of audiences because even those, let's say, older generations, like the baby boomers, even in their 60s today, are very active. It's not like years ago that it was very much by the age of 60, you were looking to retire and you weren't really interested. Nowadays, you see from the age of 60s, they will be active. They will even have elements of fluency economically because of their retirement. They're able to purchase and they have interest in having, let's say, being consumers, buying. So you cannot just eliminate them. But then you have the following generations, and every single generation thinks, works in completely different ways. So as future professionals, it's so important to have that present when you're going out there and you're looking into the business context in any way, from an operations point, logistics, from a pure management, from a marketing perspective. Those points are very, very important, and it's something that I've learned over the years. And it hasn't been easy at times, because some campaigns have actually failed because we've not been able to identify and tailor our decisions, bearing in mind all of these, let's say, different generations. And, you know, all of us, I think, I would say, everyone is on social media, right? Everyone has some sort of social media, social platform that they're using. But when we think of social media, it's now evolving. It's changing a lot. And I can talk from a UK perspective that is very, very in parallel of the US. That where before, when we thought of social media and how we marketed and we commercialized our products, it was about the voices, it was about the keywords that you were kind of pushing out. Now, it's what we call intelligent influencers. And it's very much, it's no longer an influencer being that person that has lots of followers and can go on a reel and, let's say, push a product or talk about a product. It's more than that. When we say intelligent influencers, we're now seeing all of the data that they are now analyzing and understanding in order to know and be clever how they can target the, let's say, the target audience, the key people that they want to reach. So that has become kind of the new buzzword of what we call in the UK. I wanted to share that with you all. Then I think, okay, all of this that I've been talking, and I've been, let's say, emphasizing and talking a lot about artificial intelligence and maybe portraying my experience in all of this. So what does it all mean for you guys and why you're all here today, really? It's about you guys will be the ones in the future managing that orchestra. You guys, it's for each of you to be able to learn, to make strong decisions in business, in whatever area of business that you decide to follow. You guys will have that power, but you also just have lots of new tools to leverage and utilize in order to make it successful. And with that, I kind of complete in terms of the side of, let's say, evolving, and linking it back with the theme of orchestra and changes, and the multi-generations, that when I spoke about, let's say, 10 years ago, when I was working in marketing, we would always focus on one channel. Easy. If it was a shop, it was retail, okay, you have your physical shops. Then we started to branch and, for example, start looking at multi-channel. You're still focusing on the same brand, just extending the platforms, how your customers can reach you. Today, pretty much every successful business, and I think I've tried to show previously the examples, everything is omni-channel. And omni-channel is from our mobile phones, SMS, we've got our social platforms, you've got your physical, let's say, shops, you've got e-commerce, and the list goes on. And with every single channel, as a challenges, and I can talk from my own experience, every single channel, you keep the essence of your brand, but you change your message. Because when we were talking previously about the multi-generation of audiences that we have, everyone takes in and digests, let's say, the message and the engagement with the brand differently. So that's why it's so important that although each channel is managed in an independent way, but there is a correlation between all of them to make sure that the essence of the brand is still there, is still strong, but you are interacting in the different mediums accordingly. This is an example. And I wanted to share this because I was talking with a friend who works in the financial sector here in Colombia, Bancolombia. And he was telling me, my goodness, there are so many redundancies, they are closing a lot of branches. My God, we're going to be replaced. And I said, why? He said, well, you know, it's like in Colombia, like 40% or 50% now of the branches are closing. So now people have to, it's so problematic to be able to do all your, let's say, financials, your transactions, etc. He said, it's all being replaced by AI, but we're not quite there. And I said to him, it's so interesting because in the UK, this is an example, just like Bancolombia, Barclays, an international bank. They did the same. In the UK about 6-7 years ago, we started to see in the UK that all of the financial sector, they were closing down branches. They were closing lots of changes. And then this takes us back to one of the first slides I spoke about, digital, let's say, industrial revolution. And there were a lot of redundancies. But what the bank started to do was move away from the standard, let's say, employee that was just doing the transactions and start employing more data analysts, artificial intelligence experts, more of those type of professions. And today, the bank has, on average, I would say all of the banks in the UK, there are like 40% of the branches, but all of them are like this. They are more like a cafe. So because after COVID, the remote working started, the changes of behavior started. So banks now are starting to develop this concept. And what they are trying to do is just like the example of Uber, just like the example of IKEA, Nike, they want to develop a new relationship with the customer. And therefore the branches are like a cafe. You can sit down, you have, you can see over here, you've got virtual, let's say, screens where you can do your transactions. You have a couple of staff, you can even make yourself coffee. And the experience is very different. But what it's doing And I suppose change is always different. It's difficult to sometimes take in and digest. But what this is doing is preparing us for the future, because that's how we are evolving and that's how things are changing. So I wanted to share this from an example of, let's say, like the UK, who is perhaps far more advanced, but it's the example of showing, you know, things are changing, but they're changing in line with our lifestyle. They're changing in line with how we are working, how we are behaving, and with what the future brings. So it's moving away from the traditional to something much more innovative. So, a bit of a coffee in the boardroom moment, I call it. So, this is a question more for you all. If any of you were a CEO today, how would you use AI to gain some competitive advantage? What would you guys do? What would come to mind that you would want to do? So, over to you guys. Hablen pues, no se queden callados. Háganle. Data, yes, correct. Data is really key. I think for and it's a really good point, because as any leader, any owner of a business, a CEO of a global company, today, because you have access to so much data, it's so critical to be able to understand it. Not only access it, understand it, but also use it. And that will allow you to be a lot more efficient, quick, agile, dynamic in being able to make decisions. It's so critical. So I think it's a good point. Thank you. Anyone else? Anything? Yeah, at the back. Tienes toda la razón. Y te contesto en español. Tienes toda la razón, porque cuando trabajas, y creo que vincula muy bien con lo que es trabajar con, digamos, distintas generaciones, porque lo tradicional también es importante, pero también la parte digital, la parte de data es fundamental para que una empresa sea exitosa en el futuro. Entonces, saber combinar y trabajar con las distintas audiencias, digamos, y los equipos. Por ejemplo, hablo por mi propio equipo. Hay personas que son muy jóvenes, que se acaban de graduar, como también hay personas que ya tienen más de 20 años de experiencia, pero todos son muy valiosos en tomar decisiones, porque todos traen o la experiencia, o traen el conocimiento, o también traen el entusiasmo, como ese dinamismo, esa innovación, ¿sí?, que ustedes traen, que ustedes como futuros líderes es lo que van a llevar a la mesa. Y es muy importante, y yo digo que cuando estamos, digamos, contratando personas, siempre buscamos el balance, porque una persona con 20 o más años de experiencia, sí, tiene la experiencia, tiene qué funciona, qué no funciona, pero a veces hay que tener nuevas ideas, hay que tener algo más dinámico, algo diferente, y arriesgarse y escuchar, como, pues, esto nunca lo hemos hecho, pero miremos, a ver. Pero ahí es donde viene lo de la inteligencia artificial y como el beneficio del data. Ahí es donde viene, que es muy importante, porque eso es lo que, digamos, ustedes como líderes del futuro, es lo que, digamos, pueden traer a la mesa, tener esa agilidad de poder utilizar ese data y poder, digamos, ponerlo a funcionar y desarrollarlo y poder implementarlo de una manera mucho más ágil, mientras que, digamos, personas con muchos años de experiencia traen otro elemento, pero quizás esas habilidades no las tienen, digamos, del todo. Entonces, sí. O sea, si es que te entendí bien la pregunta, ¿sí? Okay, anyone else wants to ask a question? Yeah? Okay, we continue. Thank you very much for those who... This is a sentence that I use very, very much, and I wanted to share it with you all. So, where human insight meets machine intelligence, it's where the future of business begins. And I think if there's one message that I would like to share with you all, it's about, and we've just been talking about the multi-generations, about the evolution of digital, let's say industrial revolution, etc. It's about our human insight will always be ours, and it will always be owned by us, and we will lead it. But what we have is a lot of tools available nowadays for us to use efficiently and in a very clever way to make things work for us and to make it a success in the business world, at least. So I always quite like that phrase. So to start concluding, I don't know how we are with time. If there's 3 things that I'd like to share with you all, it's one thing I can say is AI is no longer optional. It's something that we really need to start embracing. We need to understand how it works. We need to use it, start using it. You all are here learning, studying. You've got a great opportunity to really leverage all the tools that are out there. And start looking internationally what tools are being used in what context, because it's very interesting what is available and how easy it is to have access to. It doesn't mean that it has to cost a lot of money or anything like that, but use it, learn about it, because it will really help you once you finished your studies. If there's something that I always tell my team is learn to think like an AI-aware leader. And I tell the team always, you need to think, use AI to your advantage. And don't just use it as, okay, just a little kind of support network. No, use it to make yourself more competitive. And stay curious, make sure that you stay ethical, because it's sometimes with AI, and we spoke about it on the data side, it is challenging, and it does open the doors to a lot of fraud, etc. So, but in all of your decision making, just be fast, be agile. We no longer have the time when you're putting together a business plan. You no longer have the time, oh, I'll work on this and in 6 months I'll have it ready. You need to be quick if you want to succeed. You need to be very, very quick. Otherwise, the likelihood is, if by the time you develop something very, very detailed and very, very comprehensive, it's out of date, because the trends are changing, people are changing, etc. So, with that, I finish the session. I hope you all found it useful. If anyone wants to connect with me on LinkedIn, this is my QR code. And then you can follow me, you can, we can connect, you can ask me questions. So I'm happy to answer. But if there's any questions at the moment that you would like to ask me, please feel free on anything. Just ask. Thank you.
¿Pueden hacer sus preguntas en español también?
Sí, sí, claro, háganlas en español. Yo respondo lo mejor que pueda, ¿no? Great. It's a really good question. Thank you. It was one of the reasons why I wanted to do the session today, because sometimes we think, oh, in the UK, this is what they do. But in South America, in developing countries, no, we're not there. This will be in 20 years. Not necessarily. There's a lot of opportunity. There's so much opportunity to adapt your decisions, your approaches in line with developing markets. And actually, this time that I've been visiting Colombia, I've seen already quite a lot of implementation and digitalization in many activities. Of course, there is a lot that are quite behind, yes, but there is also a lot of technology that is available internationally that could be adapted to the developing countries. Sometimes it's a question of just knowing that that technology exists. And I can give you an example where artificial intelligence has been used and has been very, very, let's say, successful, and has been in the African economies, for example, where the poverty is so high and the children were starting to become blind because they have no access to the optician, they don't have access to anything. And an app was developed by an Englishman, and this app is on your phone, on the mobile phone. And what it does, it allows you to go to any rural area in the country, primarily in Kenya is where they did this, and they scan the eyes, and they can tell from scanning to what degree the issues with the sight that person has. And developing the app, today, it is costing $5 for every application. And this is all tailored for developing countries. So I think your point is correct. I think when we think, let's say, big picture, we think, oh, this is very much talk around developed countries. But there is so many opportunities, so much to do in countries like South America. When I think of El Quindío, like the tourism, there is so much, so many opportunities. And that's why I wanted to share this today, because I think it's leveraging what you have here, understanding the needs, and trying to think outside of the picture, and things that don't have to cost millions and millions. It's just being clever and knowing what to go for, and starting to look in different markets, because there is so much that you can bring. Hopefully I answered your question. Yeah. ¿Alguien más quiere preguntar algo? Considero que vuelvo al punto de lo que es el análisis de data. Entonces lo vemos el hecho de que tengamos celulares y estos smartphones, ya cada minuto se están, digamos, se está analizando todo el comportamiento de nosotros, porque eso se está viendo. Entonces, digamos, Google, Apple, todos analizan cómo es el uso del celular, cada aplicación, por eso quiere, digamos, adquirir, digamos, tu email, todo, porque es data. Porque ese data es lo que vale. Creo que, digamos, para líderes del futuro, si hay algo que puedo decir, digamos, de mi propia experiencia y con el equipo que manejo, es ser mucho más, digamos, dinámicos cuando están tomando decisiones. Y yo sé que suena muy fácil decirlo, porque pues cuando uno tiene una presión, que tiene un presupuesto y que uno también siente, bueno, si yo no soy exitosa con esta propuesta y todo, pues, ¿qué me puede costar o le puedo causar una pérdida a la empresa? Claro, pero es, como ustedes jóvenes, es como tratar de digamos, desarrollar ese dinamismo en poder, digamos, con las ayudas que hay, digamos, las herramientas que hoy en día hay, utilizarlas para su ventaja y así poder, digamos, tomar decisiones mucho más, digamos, rápidas, eficaces, porque tienen esas herramientas que les están ayudando. Si yo, digamos, me devuelvo 10, 15 años atrás, a uno, digamos, para conseguir entender, digamos, 100, 200 personas cómo se estaban comportando en cierto medio, tocaba hacer las encuestas, tocaba hacer todo, era muy manual. Hoy en día hay muchas formas de obtener ese mismo data por medio del internet. Entonces, utilicen esas herramientas, es lo que, digamos, yo sugiero, y sepan interpretar ese data, porque es muy importante. A veces las personas no las interpretan bien y pues tampoco es exitoso, pero es la interpretación de ese data que los va a hacer mucho más eficaces, es lo que diría. Espero que haya... Pues,
¿cuáles otras habilidades son bien valoradas en las organizaciones? En este caso de la inteligencia artificial,
yo diría que, digamos, tener la mente mucho más abierta. Por ejemplo, las empresas hoy en día, las operaciones, todas las están, digamos, vinculando más. Entonces, por ejemplo, años atrás, trabajaba en marketing, bueno, el equipo del departamento de marketing está allá y está, digamos, muchas veces nos decían, son los que hacen los dibujitos bonitos, ya, eso es marketing, pero hoy en día, digamos, trabajamos con todas las áreas de operaciones, o sea, se están vinculando más, entonces es muy importante que aunque te especialices en una área, todas las, digamos, las áreas de negocios, todas las otras áreas son importantes entenderlas, saber, porque tienen un beneficio a lo que estés trabajando. ¿Sí? O sea, ahorita, por ejemplo, al menos en Inglaterra, hay mucha unión, digamos, de todos los distintos departamentos. Lo que antes trabajábamos muy independientes. Y eso es algo que, digamos, para los jóvenes es muy importante, porque también a veces dice uno, bueno, yo estoy trabajando y me estoy especializando en operaciones, pero pues no tengo ni idea de la parte financiera, o no es tan importante saber tanto de marketing y esto, pero no, marketing tiene la parte psicológica digamos, del consumidor, entender los comportamientos del consumidor, luego la parte de operaciones, porque pues si una operación, digamos, falla, no está llegando en la hora que tiene que llegar, también tiene un impacto en la lealtad del consumidor. Necesitamos, desde un punto financiero, un punto, digamos, no solamente, digamos, ser, se me dio la palabra, profit, tener ganancias, eso, gracias. Aparte de, obviamente, todos trabajamos para tener una ganancia, porque si no, pues tampoco la empresa va a continuar. Pero más de eso es poder establecer, digamos, qué otras cosas puede, como digamos, qué otros beneficios puede generar a la empresa desde un punto financiero. Hay veces tenemos marcas, y lo digo por mi propia experiencia, tenemos marcas que quizás no son la que está dando la mayor ganancia a la empresa, pero son marcas que las tenemos tácticas porque necesitamos que digamos, eso ayuda a las otras marcas que quizás estamos vendiendo menos, pero con un margen de ganancia mucho más alto y cosas así. Entonces es muy importante que como futuros líderes puedan entender de todas las operaciones de una empresa. Al menos en Inglaterra ya eso está muy, muy vinculado. Espero que te haya. Gracias. ¿Alguna otra pregunta? Tell me. Okay, so when we think of different generations and we go, let's say, to your generation and let's say the older generations, of course, new technology, let's say artificial intelligence is, let's say, more complicated, it's more complex. But it's like part of every transition in life. You go through the phase of, let's say, I'm not too keen, I'm not too sure. Then you start to embrace it, and then you adapt. And I think that's the transition we're going through to nowadays. And I think that is why it's so important that you will always need the human touch. Can't replace human touch. So, for example, I was showing the example of the financial sector in the UK. Yes, it's all very much, you go in, you serve yourself, go to one of the digital screens, put in a transaction, etc. But it's got to the point that now, for example, for older generations, we have, let's say, actual in-person assistance during 5 hours during the day, during these days. So the older generations go and do the traditional transaction, how they've always done it. And that's how, for example, in the UK, they have overcome that challenge because, for example, the UK has a very high population of plus 60. So those people are always going to be more challenged or more adverse in embracing artificial intelligence. But like the financial sector, they've all been adapting their strategy, and that's why I emphasized on of being able to understand the different generations, because you have to market and you have to interact with all the different audiences in the right way. You can't just ignore, because that generation of 60 plus today, their longevity is much longer than years ago. So they're important. You can't ignore them. And I think it's being able to adapt and being able to adopt different approaches to meet the criteria and being able to engage with the different audiences. Hopefully I answer. Yeah. it's a big debate. It's a big debate because I suppose it depends, and this is from my experience, from what I see. What happens? Yes, you are right. Maybe, unfortunately, those people that are behind a counter in the branch offering manual transactions, yes, there will be some redundancies. But at the same time, there is a lot more of work opportunity for specialists in data, for new professionals virtually to be able to do remote working. So, for example, when they did the statistics in the financial sector, there's a lot of, let's say, those traditional posts have been eliminated, most of them. But there are so many new job opportunities and beyond borders, not just in the UK, because they want to capture everywhere. And this is where I suppose where the young man was asking me about developing countries, etc. This also allows, with the whole remote working, it allows, and I have friends here in Colombia that are working for international companies, and they're based in Medellin and Bogota, and they are working for American companies because you could do it remote. So that is, let's say, eliminating some of the borders. Yeah.
Agradecemos mucho a Victoria por esta excelente conferencia, realmente aprendí bastante. Chicos, también muchas gracias por su asistencia y participación. A quienes se conectaron allí a través del canal de YouTube de la universidad, también muchísimas gracias y pues esperamos pronto tener nuevos eventos para todos ustedes. Muchas gracias.